Hello there, my friends, and welcome to the Friday episode of Stand Up. On today's show, I welcome comedians Christian Finnegan and Ophira Eisenberg, who often join me together for a hilarious and insightful conversation, as always. But before that, I have a really thoughtful conversation with my very good friend, Dr. Jason Johnson. I think you're going to like both of these conversations. They're very poignant and thoughtful and thought-provoking. Meant a lot to me, and I hope they mean something to you today and that you take something from them. Thanks to all of you who hung out with me. Over, I think, 60 people at one point, was it? How many? I don't know. I definitely drank too much last night at our hangout. We had a great time hanging out and got to meet my new intern. Odessa was there. It was really fun. I hope that you'll join us next Thursday night. If you're not already a subscriber, sign up now at standupwithpete.com. It's Friday. We don't do the news on Friday. We just get right to the conversations. I hope that's okay with you. I hope everything is okay with you today. Very grateful that you are listening to the show. I really think you're going to like it. So let's get to it. First, I've got Dr. Jason Johnson. He, of course, is a regular contributor and even anchor now on MSNBC. He's a professor at the School of Global Journalism and Communication at Morgan State University. And you should check out his podcast if you haven't already. It's called A Word on Slate. Talked a little bit about his upcoming episode. He's on Twitter at drjasonjohnson, drjasonjohnson.com. Ladies and gentlemen, a jingle from the great Gareth Sever that I don't know if I've ever played, and I didn't get to play it when Jason was here, but I'm going to play it for everybody now, and then we'll get right into the interview. The very talented, from Buckets and Boards, Gareth Sever. Take it away, Gareth.
Dr. Jason Johnson keeps pace with his response and neatly unpacks all his thoughts on everything from politics to Comic-Con. And he seems like such a nice guy, and I think you all understand why. You should devour every lesson served at his verbal delicatessen. Dr. Jason Johnson keeps on talking on and on and on and on.
Now, usually I'm harassing you to come talk to me, but yesterday you reached out and you're like, let's tape something. And I just want to ask you on the record, was there any impetus for that?
It was just the new year, and I love my friend Pete, and there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world. And I don't really do new resolutions at all. They take too much time and effort. But I went to Merida, Mexico for the holiday, and I had been on a news blackout for a couple of days.
Nice.
I really had been like, I'm not trying to, I stayed off Twitter, and everything, just all this sort of stuff. I wasn't even watching local news in Mexico, which a lot of times I tend to do. And then as I was slowly making my way back in, I was like, oh my gosh, I was looking at all the stuff happening in Congress. I was looking at all this stuff, what happened in Monday Night Football, which I didn't even watch the game. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. And this is in addition to the fact that, we have national security, health issues, all sorts of other crazy stuff, cultural things going on. And I was like, yeah, let me talk to Pete.
Great. Well, yeah. I'm glad that's kind of the reason. I had wondered and I wanted to ask you, because we can always talk about all those things that you just mentioned, but we're good friends, and you've always been open with me and publicly about the loss of your very close friend it was about a year ago.
Yeah, it was a year ago.
I also just kind of wondered, I was like, you know what, when I see this a lot with guys, I've noticed this, when you lose somebody unexpectedly, it makes you want to be closer and curate other relationships. And I'm not saying insinuating that's why you reach out to me. I'm asking, how are you doing? And is that a thing that what have you learned from his loss? What have you taken?
Do you
mind me asking you that? I'm sorry I hit you with that.
No. It's great, actually, because here's the thing, man. Like I've probably shared this with you before. I have kept diaries and journals since I was like 12 or 13 years old.
Me too.
It's one of the greatest gifts, I've ever, given to myself.
Yeah, me too.
And so I had just in a couple of days before New Year's Eve, I had just been looking back through some of my old journals and conversations I had with my friend, Carlton Haywood. And for those of you who remember, Carlton Haywood was one of only 3 practicing Black biomedical ethicists in the country. He passed away of sickle cell on December 31st of last year, around 9 in the morning. Or I guess this was 2021 heading into 2022. And so, as we were getting closer to the 1 year anniversary of his passing, I was just looking through and all conversations we had. I started writing in my journal. I was crying. There's a song that I listen to from time to time. It's called Laundry Day, and it's from On My Block, which was a great show on Netflix about like high school friends. Every time I listen to the song, I cry. But I think what I've really gotten out of the last year is you recognize it's not that you have to bring certain people closer. It's the sort of sadness of finality.
Yeah.
Right. Most things in life that we experience are not permanent, good or bad. They're just not. Right. Arguments with a spouse last, losing a job. It's a temporary thing. You may be out of work for a while, but eventually you get another job. Your heart is broken, and then you fall in love again. You gain weight, and then you lose it, or whatever else it is. But the thing about when someone's gone is like there's a finality of it. You're not going to wake up one day and it's ever going to be different. You are perpetually changed. And for me, I have a very dear friend named Tasha, and last year I spent New Year's at her house. She does this sort of manifestation ceremony, and you write down some things and you put them in ash or whatever. And that's where I spent, the last New Year's in 2021 when CJ passed. She sent me a really, really nice gift. She's like, I want you to use this manifestation book for this new year for Christmas. And all I could think about was all the great things that have happened over the last year that I didn't get to tell him. And I know he's here, and regardless of what level of spirituality people have, like I objectively and spiritually believe that people who are no longer physically with us are aware. They are still awarenesses. So I know he's here. He's never not with me. His jacket is laying over on my couch right now. But it was weird. It was this sad feeling. It wasn't mourning. It's different than mourning. And I'll also say this for anybody and everybody out there. And I know a couple of people who went through losses, a number. I have a good colleague, who lost her son, surprisingly. I know a couple of people who lost parents. I know a lot of people who this holiday season was their first time without their loved one with them. And what has struck me also is that you find a way to not regret or not put any unrealistic obligations on yourself about how you heal, right? You lose your mother, you lose your father, you lose a sibling, you lose a son. Doesn't mean you have to suddenly make peace with everybody. It doesn't. It means you experience that loss.
Or try to replace them even. Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do that. And I'll go further. I don't know if you and I had a chance to talk about this, but it's something that really hit me. I had earlier this year, my brother's former best friend died. And he and his friend had a falling out about 10 years ago, and they hadn't spoken. And then he just gets this random phone call from the guy's girlfriend. She's like, hey, he passed away. My brother and I are talking. My brother's on the phone crying. And he's like, I don't know why I'm crying. He's like, I haven't talked to him in 10 years. I was like, dude, because he was your freaking best friend. Yeah. And you guys haven't talked in 10 years because you were arguing, right? What that hit me with, and I remember writing to CJ about it when I was journaling, is I did come up with a list, Pete, of people in my life who we may not be close anymore. We may not be cool anymore. You know one of these people. But we may not be close anymore. We may not be cool anymore. But it was like, if you out of the blue heard that this person passed, would you feel bad that you hadn't talked?
Huh.
And that's a very, very, it's been an interesting journey for me, because that's very different than you're not necessarily trying to rebuild the relationship or repair it. But there are people in your life that if you just like, shit, I haven't talked to such and such in 4 years, but damn, I didn't know they were dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a whole different feeling. It's a whole different feeling.
I think your list is a interesting thing to do. You literally went through and checked off people you hadn't talked to, and then asked yourself how you'd feel if they were gone. And it's an interesting exercise.
Yeah.
I don't know what, I mean, did you take anything away from it? Did you contact anybody? Be like, you know what? I don't want you to be dead.
Yeah. So, dude, this is the crazy thing that happened. Like, as I started going through the list, like, and I've gotten through 3 of them.
Oh, wow.
I've gotten through 3. This is 5. I've gotten through 3. One was an old friend of mine, and we had a disagreement over business like 2 years ago, and we reconnected and we did brunch. And like, we ain't gonna be boys again, but I'm like, dude, like, again, if something were to ever happen to you or vice versa, I would think the reason we hadn't talked was not deep enough for me to have not spoken to you.
There's a threshold for sure.
Yeah. It's like, he didn't smash the E-class. He didn't sleep with my dog or something. So I
that would be that. I don't even know where I put that list.
Yeah, I know. So had brunch with that guy. It was very, very cool. The other were 2 friends that I had known since college. One, we had a little disagreement, blah, blah, blah. And I will tell you, Pete, this is really crazy. Again, for those people, regardless of what your belief system is out there, it's like the moment I put that energy out there that I was doing it, 2 of the people reached out to me. They didn't even know. I mean, like, nobody could have known I was doing this. This internal process. One woman reached out to me and literally said, she sent me a text and she was like, "Hey, Jason, I know we haven't talked in a while. Can you shoot me your email again?" I was like, "All right, fine. Shoot her my email." And she sends me this long email apologizing. She's like, "I finally gone to therapy." She's like, "You used to tell me about this for years. I finally gone to therapy. I finally started working through some stuff. And you know what, Jason? I've been a shitty friend to you. And it makes sense that you haven't talked to me in a couple years. And I'm really sorry." And like, just go through this whole thing. It was amazing.
That is a profound self-aware discovery for that person. I'd love to know what that person, how they got there and who else potentially they got there with, because that's healthy. It's a great thing.
It was very amazing. And I, like I said, I keep journals. So I actually went through some of my old journals and I was like, well, when I responded to her, I was like, well, yeah, I said, this is some of the stuff. These are some of the exchanges you and I had back in college and graduate school. So, I appreciate it. I said, look, I'm not mad at you anymore or anything else like that. I'm glad that you're in this space. And then I told her, I was like, you're not going to believe this, but you're on a list of people I didn't want to be dead.
Let me ask you this as a way to just move it along. Do you have a lot of friends? And what do you consider like a friend? Like, do you talk to people on a regular basis, a daily basis in any way? Like, I talked to a guy, everybody knows this, on the Marco Polo app who lives in Australia. We haven't seen each other in over a decade since my wedding in 2009, but we talk every single day, maybe a couple times a day. It's become almost like, I don't know. I think it's healthy. Yeah. He's been an amazing person in my life and I for him. And there's a lot of other people I talk to pretty regularly, but do you have any kind of routine relationships with people or bonds that are in any way unusual?
I do. And I'm glad you mentioned that, right? Because like I said, there's still 2 people on this list who I haven't spoken to. Like, I have always, just itches my ass, wrinkles my nose when I hear people, especially on social media, Facebook's famous for this, like, I'm purging people from my life and I'm getting rid of toxic. Oh, stop it. Human relationships aren't static, right? People who are toxic don't stay toxic forever. People who are this, cut that crap out. I don't purge people from my life. Even good relationships, even good friendships ebb and flow.
Yeah.
You may have a really close friend that you go through a couple of months where y'all are just talking every day for whatever reason. Shit, it could be fantasy football, right? And during those football months, you talk a lot and then you may not talk for a couple of months or you only text each other one way or another. So I have a pretty good and organic group of friends that are at different layers, right? So there are people who I talk to probably every single week, even if it's just in my car on the way to the store. There's another group of people where I probably talk to them once a month, or we get together once a month where I'm traveling and we will get together. I have a very good friend whose father passed away actually couple months ago who lives in Nashville. We don't talk on the phone. We may text occasionally if we see something funny. But when we get together a couple of times a year, we will spend all day together talking and hanging out and whatever. And I consider her to be one of my closest friends. So it just kind of varies. I have another good friend like that. I was in, we hadn't talked in a couple months and sometimes I forget to text back, blah, blah, blah. We got together for breakfast at 9 and hung out till 4 in the afternoon.
Wow.
That's just kind of how it is. Like, so I always think there's this, when you're 14, you'll be like, this is my first best friend. This is my second best friend.
Yeah. I still do that.
Right. You still rank them, or like, what was it? This first cell phone plans in the late 90s were like, who are your top 5? Like these categorized of who's important enough to you. I don't do that, but like there's an ebb and flow. There's a rotation. And so, for example, I'll tell you quickly, like one of the other people who reached back out to me, and I had been ignoring her calls because I didn't want to talk to her. When we finally spoke, she said to me, and I thought this was compelling, that's why I'm not using names, but she said, Jason, she's like, we've known each other since we were 19 years old. She's like, I've known you for more than half my life. And she's like, and I miss you. And I was like, God damn it. I was like, you were on my list anyway, but it's like, are we ever going to get to the point where we're talking every week again? Probably not. She's got a whole ass life, but
relationships, they change, they evolve based on so many different circumstances, your job, your family, your whatever's going on. Let me just ask you one more about friendship, and then I want to talk about all the news if we have time here. Do you think there's any way to generalize about black male, white male friendships? People our age-ish, our generation, because I think I can do a little bit of generalizing about it. Cultural references, obviously, but like humor is like a code switching there with a lot of my black friends. But it doesn't mean there's not a ton of humor with like my white friends, especially like my high school friends, constantly busting balls, but it's different. And there's a few other things, but mostly I would say it's pretty similar in terms of like the intimacy and closeness that I have with certain people, even if I haven't talked to them. Like I don't see a real difference, too much of a difference culturally, regardless of their, kind of economic background or their the struggles that they've had, that we've had. But do you see anything differently with like your white friends, your black friends? Is there any way to generalize, or do we dispense of this conversation? I'm talking about men our age-ish, race.
Men our age. So here's what's funny. And I might have mentioned this before. I don't know. I think you and I have talked about this like off the air. So years ago, I was living in Atlanta. I was dating this one woman. She's like, I don't understand you. I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, you have these really radical, intense, nationalistic black politics, but like most of your freaking guy friends are white guys. Like,
that's why I asked you. I know you have a lot. I know you have a lot of like white. Like, I mean, I understand some black folks will never fully trust like a white person to come into their life. I understand that, but certainly you have had tons of different, and because of you're a nerd, I think.
Yeah, I mean that plays a role. So I don't see much of a difference. But again, Pete, it's because and there was. Do you remember this viral video 12, 13 years ago now? Things white girls say to black girls. You remember Francesca Ramsey's viral video?
No.
It's worth finding. It's on YouTube. She ended up on CNN with Anderson Cooper. And Francesca Ramsey she's an actress. She's a writer. I think she was on Superstore for like a season or two. But she did this video, and it was all about like the sort of random, we now call microaggressions that she experienced with a lot of her white girlfriends sort of growing up that she didn't even realize were microaggressions until she got into her late 20s and early 30s. And I remember both at the time and now laughing about that because I don't know those kinds of white people. My white guy friends, I talk to them about the same stuff that I talk to my black guy friends about.
Yeah, same.
And I don't edit.
No, I don't edit. I will straight up talk to them about race. I actually haven't told anybody black this yet, but it's really funny. I'll tell you. So Julia, my now 15-year-old, she goes, she said the other day where we were in the car, all of us on vacation. I don't know how it came up. I forget. She goes, when I was really little, I do remember thinking that black people all knew each other. And I was like, I wonder it's probably pretty common and normal for any culture to think that about another culture. But I hadn't really ever thought about it. It's so funny though. It was kind of funny.
It's dude, first off, like I've had white friends say that to me. And it makes me laugh, especially when you're younger, because you know where that comes from, right? The initial thing that your white friends usually is because they see the head nod, right? It's all about the head nod. You know the head nod, right?
I know the head nod, but I'd never talked about it. I didn't know we were allowed to.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. I had white friends and they're like, dude, do you know that guy? I was like, no. Well, why'd you nod heads? Because he's black. And they just assume like you've been walking with your white friends, and when they see you nod or head nod or blink or whatever it is to another black person, they assume that you have to know them, because otherwise, why are you doing this sort of silent greeting? Why
do I do the head nod to every black man I see, and he does it to me?
Because they think you're black.
Why do they think that?
Because there's certain white people, dude. I have family members that look like you.
But I mean, I'm driving in the parking lot, leaving the mall, and he's driving in, and he looks at me, and we head nod each other. And I don't think I always do it first. I often do.
There is. I'll tell you. It's funny. I said this.
I don't know why I do it, but I know I do it to black men. I don't do it to white men or women or any woman.
Right? Yeah. You kind of. We don't head nod women either. Like I don't see a black woman be like, "Hey, how you doing?" She's like, "Who is this guy?"
But I'm being honest. I realize I do it, and I have done it, and I've always recognized that I do it, and I've always recognized that black men do it back to me. Strangers everywhere I go for the last. I'm sure it has something to do with being radicalized in college by the blacks.
by the coloreds. But here's the thing, and this is honest goodness thing, Pete, why it probably works for you. It's because there's an inherent assumption that if this white guy knows how to do this, or if he's culturally familiar with it, then he must be cool. I remember saying this, like one of my friends, Wiley, is a former student of mine. I remember taking him to a party in D.C., and it was during Congressional Black Caucus weekend. This was years ago. Take him to this party, D.C., nice club downtown, and I'm about 10, 12 years older than him because he's a former student of mine. And I intentionally abandoned him at the party. I just left him. Left him on his own. This white kid from Youngstown, Ohio. Not even really Youngstown.
That has got to be a great bit in his stand-up act.
Oh my God. He talks about it to this day. We were just actually talking last weekend. And he's like, "You just left me there." I was like, "Yeah." And not only did I leave him at the party, Pete, but like I stood on a balcony and watched him in the party. He didn't even know.
Like a social experiment?
Yeah, basically, because I'm an ass. And
like a lab?
Right. He was like a lab rat. And I was like, can he find the cheese? Right? Can he find
He's looking around for someone to acknowledge his existence. He's like George Santos. He's like George Santos.
Right. Exactly. It's like, no, really, I'm supposed to be here. But anyway, so the point of this, and this goes with your head nod, is so we reconnect later on. Like I found him at the party. He's like, "Where were you?" I was like, I don't know, dude. I was just hanging around. And so later on, and again, he's from like racist Niles, Ohio. And he's like, he was kind of marveling. He's like, "Everybody was nice to me. This woman comes to talk to me and blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "I'm just surprised." And I said, "I know you're surprised." I said, "Because that's not how white people treat black people. You've taken me to your church. I've gone to white events with you, and people look at me like, what the fuck are you doing here?"
Right.
And look at me with suspicion and aggression, everything else like that. For black people, if they see a random white man or woman in a 99% black space, we generally assume somebody brought you here, right, and somebody thought you were cool enough to bring here.
Do you think
you must be cool?
Do you think that's changed at all for black folk in, say, a church? If a white guy walks in, based on your friend who was killed by the white guy who walked into the church, because I'm sure that's why those people were victimized by him. Because generally speaking, that what you say is true in most, black dominant spaces. But once something like that happens, you don't blame anybody in a black church, much less a synagogue or something, any house of worship, when some unfamiliar person walks in, much less a white guy in a black church.
No, I don't think it's changed that much. And here's why.
That's nice.
Because it's the circumstances, right? One of the grotesque, tragic things about what happened at Mother Emanuel is Dylan Roof showed up at Bible study, right? Which is a very specific thing. You figure like, oh, you must know that there's Bible study tonight. So you've already, like, there's a presumption of familiarity, right? And then he sat and prayed with them. He did a whole Bible study with them. And so the assumption that this person who could mean us harm if they walk into this room during a specific time that you would only know if you really cared, right? And then sat here and worshiped the Lord with us for an hour, right? Now, I will tell you, on my campus at Morgan State University, in my particular department building, we have security. Now, I know I'm not the only person.
A lot of black people on that campus.
Right, exactly. I teach at a historically black college university, Morgan State University. Now, I am a public figure. We have other public figures on campus, right? But I'm a public figure different than maybe somebody in the chemistry department. And so I will say, if a random white person looks like they're lost and is in our building, there is a very aggressive tendency to say, can I help you? Because you don't know why they're there.
Is it true that a lot of the chemistry professors at your university see you and talk about you behind your back? And, well, there's Mr. TV. There's Mr.
A lot of Professor Franks there who are very mad at me, and they feel shaded because, I was like, well, it's not like famous chemistry professor. But again, I'm sure we've got like people in the business school who are well known, and we got a whole bunch of authors and stuff in the English department. But it's like, you have certain campuses, certain campus environments where, I'll give you probably a better example.
Okay.
Frankly, a better example to me, like Hannah Nicole Jones at Howard's campus. There are crazy people out here. There are entire state legislatures in the South who have railed against the 1619 project, who have tried to make that something that they campaigned off of. So I am sure, I don't know where her office is, but I am sure that wherever it is that she works on that campus, there is a heightened sense of awareness if somebody looks like they're out of place.
Yeah. Yes. You got, good security, private security or public, knows, who's, because they get the threats reported to them.
Right. Exactly.
Let me ask you, do you have like 5 more minutes?
Of course.
Okay. So the news, first of all, you have a lot of interest, a wide range of interests, from obviously comic books to literature to TV and film and sports. Yes, indeed. You're a big sports fan and an NFL fan, fair to say.
Yes.
And so you weren't watching the game the other night, but you do have thoughts about it. You've been talking to a lot of people about it. And your next podcast, which may have dropped by the time this does, you had a really great guest. So what are your thoughts on Damar Hamlin and what happened to him the other night? On any angle at it.
I had a great conversation with Howard Bryant, who's an ESPN writer, reporter. He used to do that great show, The Sports Reporter, for a long time. I want to highlight this because I think it's really important, and it bleeds into sort of my perspective. Howard Bryant is one of the few sports journalists that I know of. I think him and Dave Zirin are some of the only sports journalists that I know who do not watch football. And they intentionally don't watch football for philosophical and moral reasons.
Interesting.
I don't find it interesting, right? I know sports reporters who don't watch hockey because they don't find it interesting. But Howard Bryant doesn't watch football. And he does't watch it because he says it's a deaf sport. It's a deaf sport.
Dave is really good friends with a lot of players and
it's from years of research. It's from watching. And he's just a very, very, very thoughtful guy. And so we had an amazing conversation that's going to drop on my podcast, A Word, tomorrow on Slate. I will say this, after talking to him, because it's not like my opinion was radically changed, but after talking to him, I do think it's this weird compromise that we all make,
for sure,
when we watch sports.
To watch gladiators?
Yeah. When I was in Mexico, and I didn't know this was legal anymore. When I was in Mexico,
is something a lot of people say.
Yeah, I know. And you start a sentence with, I was in Mexico and didn't know this was legal. This could go a lot of directions. But when I was in Merida, Mexico, I did not realize that bullfighting was still legal in parts of Mexico. And there were all these protesters outside. It was near the resort I was staying at. All these protesters outside saying, hey, every ticket you buy is contributing to the torture of animals, right? And I really thought about that, after Hamlin went down, because it's like, look, every eyeball that you put, every tweet that you put about the NFL, every post that you do, you are contributing to a business that we know from top down is a grotesque abuse of the human body with a pittance of compensation for what these men give up. And no, you can't say, well, they have a choice, blah, 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 because the population of people that professional basketball and most professional sports draw from is a systematically oppressed population that doesn't have other freaking options. That's part of why they see sports as the best way to go. You don't see, outside of certain fancy pants quarterbacks, but the vast majority of people who play professional basketball and football and soccer are not people who come from means, opportunity, and money. So it's oppressive all the way through. And unfortunately, I deal with the cognitive dissonance, But when I think about Damar Hamlin, the biggest takeaway I take from it is the league is not going to do the one or two things they should do to make things like this less likely, which is guarantee contracts, lengthen the season, and reduce the amount of padding that people have to wear. If you reduce padding, a lot of this stuff might go away.
Yeah, there's some really interesting suggestions that have come as a result of it. All right, well, then what do you think about, last thing, I guess, Republicans in disarray? What are your thoughts on what we're watching as we speak? I think it's an 8th vote that they still down 3 days in now, 3 rounds. What does it mean to you? How are we supposed to feel emotionally about like the Schadenfreude, the joy that we're taking in watching this struggle? Because I think it's a little bit dangerous because, as I've said to almost every guest I've talked to about this, let's not miss the forest for the trees. Locally, if you think Republicans are in disarray, you're wrong. I'm telling you right now in my own town. So they might be in the House, but they got it together at their town boards and a lot of school boards. They're pretty organized and don't get caught flat-footed. But what are your thoughts?
So I'm going to say this, and then I have a big thing I'm going to say at the end before we hop off.
Sure.
What the freaking frack do people expect? Okay, tomorrow is the 2-year damn anniversary of a large swath of these people trying to violently overthrow the government. How the fuck should we be shocked that they don't know how to govern?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. That is my number one freaking takeaway. Any conversation about what the hell is happening, forgive my language, but any conversation about what's happening in Congress right now should only be from the framing of these people are terrorists and terrorist sympathizers, and terrorists are not about governing. So, of course, we can laugh. I don't really laugh about what's happened with Kevin McCarthy because I'm like, he sold out a long time ago. But what I do say is, rather than focusing on, I can't believe they can't pick a leader, why don't 6 Republicans who supposedly give a crap about this country just vote for Hakeem Jeffries? He's 6 short. You can get a Speaker of the House. The only reason you don't have a Speaker of the House is not because there's not enough votes for McCarthy. It's because you have an entire organization masquerading as a political party when it's just a dime store front for a terrorist organization.
When you say
that's why we have this.
Be more specific. I can see terrorist sympathizer. Who do you think are terrorists that are currently running, are currently members of the House? How do you define that?
Anybody who supported the January 6th insurrection, and by supporting meaning actively engage in encouraging and supporting those people, fighting against any attempt to investigate those people, sending money or fundraising or speaking on behalf of those people, you are a terrorist. And remember, the core definition of terrorism is using violence to achieve things that you can't achieve through the known current political process. That's terrorism. And there's a difference between terrorism and protesting. Protesting is going outside of the political system to vocally complain. But you don't necessarily think that the system itself has to be torn down. Yeah. Terrorism is, I can't get this done the right way for whatever reason, and I'm going to use violence. That's the difference between G.I. Joe and Cobra. It's a terrorist organization.
He did it. He did it, folks.
Yeah, I know.
All right, what's your final big thing?
Tomorrow night, tonight, if you have a chance, go see. I mean, I don't even feel like I have to tell people this, which is what makes me so excited. Go see the movie Megan. Go see Megan. I know you've seen ads for this. It's the one about the doll, and it's been viral, and it's all the dancing. It's the horror film coming out tomorrow. Megan, M, and the E is spelled with a 3. It's like a modern day version of like Chucky.
Megan is a marvel of artificial intelligence, a lifelike doll that is programmed to be a child's greatest companion and a parent's greatest ally. She can watch, learn, and listen as she plays the role of friend, teacher, playmate, and protector. But it's a horror film?
Yes.
Who are you affiliated with that you're selling this?
I love the technical ways that Kayla Cooper is a writer. She's a dear friend, one of my favorite people. She took me to the Super Bowl earlier this year. Kayla Cooper is the writer. A black woman is the writer of this movie, Megan. She also wrote Malignant last year. She wrote on Star Trek Brave New World. She worked on Luke Cage. She's one of my favorite people. The movie is like, look, the movie screens so well that like she's already writing the sequel.
Well,
but like if you like these kinds of films, you got to go see it.
I think this is the best way to sell a film like this on a podcast audio way. And you can do this easily. This movie, Megan, if you like blank and blank, you'll like this.
There we go. If you like Child's Play, if you like Scream type horror, this is the movie that you want to see.
Got it.
Doesn't have to be gross. Doesn't have to be. It's not graphic violence. It's the crazy, wild suspense of your closest Facebook AI friend gone mad.
And because your close friend is one of the writers, a writer that you've already seen it.
No, we're actually seeing a screening tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, there you go, folks. There's the big plug.
Yes.
I was
Megan Thee Stallion has been tweeting. Linda Carter has been tweeting about this movie. Everybody who has seen it says it's fantastic.
Wow. You've heard it here, everybody. Dr. Jason Johnson, you've done it again. I can't thank you enough for having this thoughtful, vulnerable, intimate conversation about everything. There's never any lines when we talk, and I adore you. Thank you, my friend.
Love you, man. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, there he goes. Dr. Jason Johnson. How about that? Thoughtful, intimate, personal, vulnerable, funny, smart. Great conversation with Jason. So glad that he reached out, and always happy to talk to him. And I think we just got even closer as friends. Love doing this show. Can't believe I get to. Can't do it without you. Thank you very, very much for supporting me and for listening to it. I think you're also going to really like my next conversation if you want to still listen, because it's really good as well. I got into some pretty serious issues with Christian and Ophira. Trigger alert. We talked a little bit about suicide and euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide. But it was a thoughtful and nuanced discussion that I appreciated. I always love talking to Christian and Ophira. You should follow both them, support both them. Check out Christian's newsletter, New Music for Old. So many of you have subscribed, and so many more of you definitely should, because it is really worth it. And, of course, subscribe and listen to Ophira Eisenberg's new podcast, Parenting is a Joke, where this past week, the guest was me. She's had some very big-name comedians on the show. She interviews hilarious comedians who are also parents, and I was really happy to join her. So check that out. It was very funny and fun. I really enjoyed it. Parenting is a Joke, New Music for Olds, Christian Finnegan, Ophira Eisenberg, and here's the jingle, another 2-in-1 day, Gareth, from Gareth Sever.
Christian Ophira Finnegan, no Christian Finnenberg. However you slice them up, you get a different word. If you say it fast enough, you clearly sound absurd. When you say it louder, it sounds like they're real words. Christian Ophira Finnegan, no Christian Finnenberg. I don't think you're ready for what you haven't heard from Christian Ophira and Pete.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, they are back. Christian Finnegan, Ophira Eisenberg. Finnegan, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to play the theme song again just before this, so let's fake react. Hi, guys. Thanks.
Hey.
Yeah,
Pete.
What a theme song that was.
Wasn't it great?
We all sat here and enjoyed it, the three of us.
I'm very happy to get the band together. I know Christian's a little under the weather. What do you got? What do you got?
Yeah, what do you got?
I'm just sick as a DOG.
What are we dealing with?
I don't know. I got a PCR test and I'm waiting to get the results back, but just one of those things where around 8:00 last night, you start feeling it come in and you're like, oh, this, and it's like not even bad. It's just a weird feeling where it's just very, you can just feel like, oh, I'm getting sick now. And
this is it.
By midnight I was, and then because my wife is so busy, I don't want to get her sick. And so I had to sleep on the couch and there wasn't a blanket. And it was just a bad situation, Pete. But I'm going to make it through.
Yeah. A friend of mine didn't do a PCR test, but she was like, I don't know if I have COVID or not. I did one test and it's positive and it's one test that it's negative. So who knows? And I was like, you know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
I wish there could
no such thing as a false positive.
Did you think at any point when you're starting to feel the symptoms that maybe you should make a choice that because that's usually what I do. I say, I'm not getting sick. And then you don't.
Yeah, I do that all the time. Fault. But you don't? Sometimes I still do. I'm like,
I just wish I had
good job, mind over matter.
Yeah, I wish I had the strength to do that, but I don't.
I think when people get ill, they're to blame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so American. That is so American.
Pull yourself up by something.
Why are you your own doctor? So I was just in Canada, but I was in the Albertan part of Canada, which is very conservative, right? They really would love, a lot of people there would love Trump. They do love Trump, and they would love Trump to come back. It's a resource-based kind of economy, so there's a certain level of thinking about economics from that point of view. And even though there is socialized healthcare, as you do know in Canada, it is a little bit different province to province how that is dealt with. So some Albertans that I got to speak to were talking to me about how terrible the healthcare is in Alberta and how they wish it was privatized like it is in America. I was like, oh my God, you have no idea what you're talking about. But then I don't know if you saw this, but it is legal in Canada, I believe federally. Euthanasia is legal.
Yeah.
There's certain things you go through, but it's legal. And so the Albertans that were complaining to me about the healthcare were like, yeah, and what's the solution? Euthanasia. So they're like, oh, really? You don't like our healthcare? You feel like you have to wait in line? Well, you can kill yourself now.
That's an argument with some holes in it.
I mean, I'm sure that there's
whoa.
I'm sure there's a grass is always greener aspect to that,
Everything.
And I'm sure it's like when you see, you hear about just these glitzy billion-dollar medical centers that, wealthy people can sort of access at their leisure. It makes it feel like it's perfect.
And they're like, we have to wait like 2 months to see a specialist. I'm like, yeah, me too.
American healthcare is really the best in the world. If you have a lot of money and a great job, then you won't have to. There's 3 ways to measure it: quality, affordability, and cost. And cost and affordability are the same. And
you're always around the corner from just a massive financial hit. Like last week, one of my molars snapped, a piece of my molar snapped. There's $2,200 just out the window that I was not expecting to have to pay.
Oh yeah. No, we just switched healthcare. And by that, I mean, we're paying for shittier healthcare because all the healthcare costs went up. And so and then you have to find the people in your network, which is a hilarious job that I have to do that. I then have to basically go through dating profiles for the shittiest. They're losers. I looked at all the doctors in my network. They're all loser doctors. These are not the people that graduated at the top of their class.
Making those kinds of comparisons. I mean, I did this for 10 years on the radio with all these health policy experts and talking about Canadian healthcare. I mean, there's trade-offs, but the bottom line is America's the only country where you can go bankrupt from medical bills. Right. And it's also, it's so limiting in America because you can't go out and do something on your own, even if you have a ton of money, because you're getting your health insurance from this douchebag over here, and so are your kids. So you really just can't make that choice. It's a shit show. Let me ask you a bioethical question, though, because I was hoping you would. You guys always love to talk bioethics, and you mentioned the euthanasia. And last night I found out that one of the guys from Dave and Buster's, one of the founders, I don't know if it was Dave or Buster, apparently shot himself. He's about 76 years old, and he had recently suffered a very debilitating stroke. And I don't know the details around this, so I'm not but I only bring it up because it's what made me think of it. I think that if you're a kind of a successful person and you get some kind of debilitating, horrible injury or illness, that's when you absolutely can talk about and think about ending your life on your own terms. And I think that there's a lot of nuance in that. And I wonder if you guys have any thoughts around that, because I think we talk about suicide, physician assisted euthanasia. It's a totally different situation when you're that guy than when you're, any other number of situations in your life where people take their life, right? We can have a talk about that, right?
What about if what about if a certain comedy club has stopped booking you? Is that a reason to
I think that's fine. Yes. The answer is yes.
That is so dark, because that
no, but that's it. It's
hilarious that there's just, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's just, as we talk about this, there is just ambulances basically circling my building. Yeah, I mean, I know I was recently, another friend of mine's mother passed away. Very sad. I said to them that it's so sad, and they were like, listen, it's a relief. And this woman, because she had severe dementia, but she was mobile, so she was able to move around, which puts you in a whole different world in healthcare, because they don't want to give you a bed or access to an affordable care facility because you're a liability, because you can walk around.
Mm-hmm.
But
it happens.
Can't. So she was in hospice. She graduated from hospice because after a year of hospice, if you're not dead, they kick you out.
Dun, 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 dun. Graduated.
And, the feeling from her kids were that if she would have been able to make a decision at the beginning of the dementia setting of what her life would look like for the next 15 years, it wouldn't have been this.
Right.
Yeah.
And she eventually did die, and they all felt sadness, but great relief because it was a sad, sad world for everyone.
People don't, that's the part of mortality or whatever, or one of the parts that nobody ever really wants to address is just the relief aspect when somebody who's been sick for a long time finally passes away. Because, we have it ingrained in our heads that, we have to wring every ounce of life out of someone, right. And no matter how miserable their lives are. And some of it, in my opinion, is a bit narcissistic, that it's, I'm not saying that, we should kill our parents or whatever, but I'm saying that it's like you were saying, it's like if this woman had made a choice about what her life was going to be like, it wouldn't have been this, but she's beyond being able to make that choice.
Right.
And, nobody wants to be the bad guy. And, and that's probably for the best. I mean, I don't know if you want to open that can of worms for people.
Murder.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is murder.
Nobody wants to be the bad guy. What do you mean by that? Oh, nobody wants to kill their parent.
Yeah, what? Well, and nobody wants to pull the plug. Nobody wants to make that. And it's, again, it's probably necessary. I mean, I guess you can't really have.
Yeah, that's why you have the documents drawn up ahead of time.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's I think that's probably the next horizon.
Make it easy on your loved ones. My dad, I think, has a document written up. He's like, if certain circumstances occur, I would like you to push me off a cliff.
No, my opinion is, like, seriously, and I'll say this to you. I'll put it out there. If I'm,
oh, can I do it? Sorry.
Yeah,
you weren't even done.
Like, give me 2 days, 2-3 days. Put a bucket of KFC under my nose. See if I react.
Right. I'll just go up to you and I'll be like, "Hey, so and so wants to book you," and if you don't flinch,
exactly. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then the KFC.
Start playing the comedy special of any one of 50 comedians I hate. And if I don't start visibly twitching with anger, then you'll know that it's
that
time
brings
for
me to my next question. How do you feel about that? I have a list of people I'll feel relief when they're dead, but I don't actually know them and they've never actually done anything directly to me.
Right. That's just
Steve Bannon is on that list, by the way.
Yeah, of course. There are people that I have definitely no idea what they're like truly as a person, and I wish them death.
Okay, I feel better now.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, sometimes I feel like it's better to not when someone's acts are just fucking evil. I honestly don't want to meet them as a person because I don't want them to hold the door for me or find out that he's got a puppy that he's really sweet to, because then that sort of clouds my morality about a person. Do you know what I mean? That it's like I'd rather keep them as a two-dimensional figure.
You don't want to humanize,
keep in perspective who they are.
You don't want to humanize people.
No, I'd prefer not to. No.
Yeah, I wish they didn't even have names. I wish they were like farm animals that you're going to butcher that we don't even give them names.
Sounds good.
How do we feel and what are our thoughts on hacky New Year's things? It's do you I've always made fun of it and I've always asked in an interview, I'm like,
are you talking about resolutions?
Anything about the year change, certainly resolutions. I've always said my birthday is my new year. That's when I go and hike and write in my journal. That's true. But this year I've decided to actually take it as a kind of renewal. I've made some choices and written down some things. I'm not going to lie. And it's going pretty well. Day 5. I'm crushing it. What are your thoughts in general about this? And how about this year, 2023? Is it going to be great?
It did. I mean, in my life, it really did start off to a limp. So, I mean, my birthday is also January 2nd. So I always feel like it's sort of like there's the holidays and then there's the sort of, then there's New Year's and then there's just this collective hangover that happens globally on my birthday where everyone starts throwing out the things that they're not doing anymore. Right. They're like, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. And no one wants to do anything. And my sister actually asked me to do dry January with her. And I said, no.
My January will be extremely liquidy and wet.
I was like, no, I'm not ready. Maybe I'll do dry February or whatever the mashup of that would be. But listen, I like it. I think in general, I think everyone should focus on it. And I know people joke around with this all the time where I go like, oh, do you have resolutions? I mean, I feel like I make resolutions every goddamn day. I'm writing lists and being like, maybe I can improve upon that. Maybe I'm going to try this as a routine, like always. So anytime someone's like, no, I don't do that, I'm like, shut up, do it.
I feel like, whether it happens on New Year's at the New Year or not, I don't think there's anything. It's kind of the way I feel about prayer. It's like, I don't believe in it, but I do think that it is a helpful thing to sort of focus your mind on what's important to you and what you'd like to, just to as a sort of way to know yourself. Like my wife makes her goals every January 1st and she checks back on them and finds out what were my goals 5 years ago and have I fulfilled them and all that stuff. And I used to kind of joke about that, but I don't think it's a terrible thing to just spend some time saying, okay, who am I now? Yep. What are the things that are important to me now, as opposed to what I believed were important to me a year ago? Yeah. The fact that happens to go down on January 1st and, when everybody's doing it, who cares?
Yeah, I went to a physiotherapist just yesterday. Yeah, yesterday, because I had a birthday. Okay. And now my body's falling apart. So I went to a physiotherapist. Very exciting. And I said, do you make any resolutions? And he goes, yeah, my resolutions this year were very pragmatic. Like, I'm going to focus on what I can change. I'm not going to be all about like, where am I in my career? How I could do better. And I was like, even you. Even you.
Wait, what is a physiotherapist exactly?
Just body alignment and they have like some fancy, fancy tools to deal with like tissue problems. Yeah.
Well, I think you're both
chiropractor kind of.
Yeah.
I think you're both describing, I like this word practice. I like it. And in my great transformation over the summer, I realized that the thing that I was missing was daily practice or prayer or resolution or whatever. But I think practice is the catch-all. And for me, it's reading, writing, and meditating. And I try to do it every day, and I don't, but I get pretty close, or I do at least a little of it or some of it. And it's like a resolution, new resolutions every day, because I remind myself every day who I want to be and who I don't want to be, often more importantly. And it's been the best thing in my life, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like, it's not doing it tomorrow is helpful, even if you don't do it today, or even if you don't do it the next day. It's like, it's all helpful.
You're forgiven.
Yeah. There's no one's keeping score except for you.
Yeah. I think compassion is a really important thing, Christian, for yourself.
I don't know. Have you met me?
Yeah, like a little, but it's a lot would be crazy.
You know what? You're right. You're right. Not for you. None for you. Oh, God.
I had some like little bits of weird focus. I was like, I can never find anything on any of my computers. My life is somewhat organized, but my digital world is insanity.
We should talk about, your digital, there's a phrase for it, your digital, anyway, go ahead. We know what you're
chaos. I can never find anything. Someone's like, hey, do you have a clip of this? And I'm like, probably, I don't know where it is. Everything's saved in a Google Drive and an iCloud and a Dropbox, and they're all redundant. And I mean, it's great. And I thought I'm going to organize this. And then I watched a video on how to do it.
Yeah.
And I literally was like, no. Like I would take years.
Oh, I actually was. I'm interested in why that didn't work. Like, I want someone to explain to me how to organize my email life.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first thing to do. Actually, someone told me to do this years ago, and I highly recommend it. It totally worked. So whatever you have in your inbox right now from last year, create a little folder called 2022 and grab all of that email and drag it in, and then it's there if you need it. Yeah. And you will find you will never need it.
Right. Why not just leave it in my inbox and never need it?
Well, if your email is bothering you because you see all the stuff and it brings up all like I'm behind and I'm never going to get to this and it's just chaos.
It's not only that it bothers me, it's just like the fact that I don't get back to certain people is horrible. It's hard. I feel such shame about it.
I'm sort of the typical me move is to like see an email and be like, you know what, I'm going to take a little time so I can craft a thoughtful response to this. And then, oh, it's been 4 weeks and I haven't responded to this very kind person who emailed me about something.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
And
you know what? I think, global sorry across to everyone and back. Everyone does this. Okay. Everyone does this. I feel like it's the same reason too why sometimes you probably
or are we just telling ourselves
like, when the fuck, maybe. But I do think like sometimes like people have not gotten back to me and it will just drive me insane. Because I'll be like, you reached out, or like whatever.
I feel the exact same way, but I know that I'm doing that to others at the same time, which is kind of it settles it for me. I'm like, all right, I can't be too upset but I did my friend Wajahad Ali called me out on it, or maybe we talked during my last time he was on this week on the podcast. I was like, dude, you weren't getting back to me, so I sent him an email. I was like, why do you hate me? And he got right back to me. That time it worked, but he was like in travel hell, like a lot of other people, but with 3 little kids. Like that's why he didn't get back to me, which is the greatest possible reason for me.
Yeah. No, and
we all want to think they're way more present in people's minds than we are.
And I do a lot of like, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll dream that I'm responding to someone or something. My dreams are so banal and boring. I literally dream about not flying, returning emails.
That's interesting that you say that, because I struggle with my dreams like night after night being epic journeys, like fucking Avatar. You guys are going to make fun of me for that example, and you should. But like some kind of real long 3-act play. It happens to me a lot, and I don't like it. I hate it, actually. It's not.
Why? That sounds amazing. Fantasy.
That's like a recurring dream for you. You have these like hero's journey.
Yes, and they're always different. And yes, usually though, there's a real struggle somewhere, and it's not. Mm-hmm. I'm not always the protagonist. That's for sure. Yeah.
I don't know what you would call an underminer with poor self-esteem, but that's what you just did there. I was like, I dream of email. You're like, I have these epic journeys, fantasies that are amazing, where I'm the lead and I'm winning, and I just don't like it.
No, I'm not. I'm often not winning. I'll say it can be bad stuff. Yeah, struggle.
We should talk about that.
Recurring dream, which is just like, I hate it when it's just like, God, it should not be this simple to like analyze myself.
Oh, no.
It's so pathetic. It's the specifics change, but it's always something where like I'm the pilot of a plane.
Oh no!
And the engines have gone out, and nobody on the plane knows except for me. And I'm trying to figure out how to tell everybody that we're all going to die. Like it's some variation of that where something terrible has gone on, and I'm the only one who knows it, and I'm in that sort of Schrodinger's cat period of like, nobody knows that we're just fucking cruising on momentum right here. Nobody knows that we're about to get out.
Do you ever make a decision in the dream? Does it ever go that far?
No, it always ends before anything is resolved.
Mm-hmm. And how do you analyze it?
It's probably the way I've thought about my career for the past 10 years, but it's just, there's something just overly fatalistic, just pointlessly fatalistic. You know what I mean? Like, just like, that's not helpful. There's nothing positive about that.
Do you know anybody? Have you heard? My brother tells me that he doesn't have dreams.
Yeah. I think that's common, but everyone does dream. You just don't remember it, right?
Yeah. Right. I think that's true.
I've been, a couple times I've tried to read this book, A Field Guide to Lucid Dreaming.
Oh yeah.
And the book is really poorly written, but it's an interesting thing. And there have been a time where I did feel like, you can kind of train yourself to lucid dream, where you are aware that you're in the dream and can kind of control things with the knowledge, like I'm sleeping right now. And it's really a cool feeling, but it's like the kind of thing you really have to do it every night to master that.
I'm into that. I'm going to look into that. I'm glad you mentioned that.
I will say now I'm going to one up you. I do that a lot. But I have these kind of banal dreams, but something is not going right in them. And then I will have the awareness about like, hey, wait, I'm dreaming. I can do whatever I want. And I'll be like, all right. And then it just becomes dumb. I'm like, I guess I'll open this door. Like, then I just become
I guess
mad
I'll ride this giant caterpillar.
Well, I'm excited for a year of hopefully continuing to get to talk with you guys. It was great being on your podcast too. That just dropped, Ophira, and I had so much fun, and I love the clip that you put out, and I'll continue to promote it. I guess
just because I don't have any children, I can't be on Ophira's parenting podcast.
We'll get one, and we'll talk.
All right,
just get one.
I'm on it.
Imagine if someone like George Santos themselves lied to fit into a category of
just to make the podcast circuit
of a show. Yeah, in this case, pretend they had a kid. You should do one with Christian, and he just shits on parents the whole time. And people who did it.
Trust me, that's actually not so far of something that we're thinking of doing, which is, because I feel sometimes as parents, we can get a little involved with ourselves in our struggle and I'm not going to say superiority, but there is maybe a self-righteousness about how hard it is. And so I
probably justifiably, I don't have a problem with that.
I think it would be good just to, especially from stand-ups, to just remind, I just want a whole montage of different stand-ups saying things like, I spontaneously travel and sleep till noon. Just all the things that you do with your life.
Yeah, I like it. I'm into that idea. All right. Well, hopefully we'll circle back again next week. But thank you guys for a great conversation as always. We covered a lot as always, and I had a lot of fun. Thank you for fitting me in.
I just want to just give a moment to just acknowledge that my sick voice is very resonant. And I just want to keep talking into this microphone. It has a real Quiet Storm vibe that I feel like I haven't gotten my full credit for yet.
It does have you have a little bit more resonance. Yeah, it has
It's a very, very white kind of thing.
I was about to plug your newsletter, New Music for Old, as soon as I hit stop. So would you mind telling us, it just dropped this week. Would you mind in that resonant voice telling us what we can expect in this week's issue?
Well, this week's was the paid subscribers only, Pete. All the hoi polloi did not have access to this week's newsletter. But mostly in this most recent week, it was a reader's poll trying to get suggestions from people on how to make it better for 2023. I have all sorts of fun ideas for how to expand on things in 2023. I'm actually legitimately kind of how hopeful about it, God forbid. But that is newmusicforolds.substack.com. I honestly, I'm so thankful that you are constantly mentioning it. And so many of my readers are Pete fans. And I just don't know that there's any more blood I can pull from that stone. But I appreciate your trying.
I don't either, believe me. But I for myself. But I think that it's great. There's a lot. I don't know why there's so many people. I guess I was going to say that so many people listen to me that love music, but it's just most people. It's not.
Most people love music.
Most people love it. I did see that. Just real quick, you used a picture that you got for this one to promote is of this track and field guy falling into the finish line. I don't get it, but I did laugh very hard when I saw it. It's a very funny picture. I feel bad for laughing, but you just wrote in the caption, haha, this guy sucks at running, which also made me laugh very hard.
See, it's the simple pleasures in life.
I'm very high when I write these.
What can I tell you? All right, guys.
All right, sorry. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
All right. There you have it. Christian Finnegan, Ophira Eisenberg. Wasn't it great? Jason Johnson, wasn't he great? And you know what? You're great. You're great for listening and supporting the show, and I hope you got something out of it. I really appreciate it. Sorry it was up late. That happens on Fridays because I'm up late doing the Hangout on Thursdays, although I'm going to try to get ahead of that and get this show up early like the rest of them during the week. I hope you have an excellent weekend. I might drop something over the weekend, so look for that. But have a great weekend. I've got to run up and get my dog now. I'm going to drive 4 hours just to get this dog. I know, I'm just kidding. I love her. And I love you guys, too. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you Monday. Bye-bye.
Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you gotta stand up. Stand up. I think your driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know us right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. We got to rise. got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up,